Hello and welcome to Battle Report number 20. All the way at number 20, how exciting. We've made it to, well, not double digits, but yeah, we've changed the tens again. How exciting. So this is game 3 of the Scottish Championships, and for this round I've been drawn against Dwarven Holds, so potentially not a great matchup for me, depending on what he's got. You know, big grindy blocks generally isn't what Kingdom of Equitaine like to deal with. One turn damage, and with how defensive dwarves are, that's not great, but yeah, we'll see how we get on. So let's take a look at the lists. So here's my list. If you've not seen the previous two, then give it a pause and take a look here, or go back and watch those two. And my opponent's Dwarven Holds list. So, very character light, only 280 points, which I think is cheaper than any of my 1 characters, which is pretty incredible. He's an engineer, which is and he's the general, obviously, because he's the only character. He's got ancestral memory to give a grudge to one of my units, so his whole army will have hatred against it. He's carrying a crossbow, a rune of denial, which I think is the one where you just get to decide that you've dispelled something, which is always nice. And he's got the rune of mining. So as long as the bearer is on the battlefield, you can choose a piece of terrain and you treat that as open terrain for advance and march moves, which is nice. So you get to ignore dangerous terrain, or potentially you could even be moving through impassable terrain, though I'm not sure how useful that would be considering how slow dwarves are. So basically it's for ignoring some dangerous terrain if you need it. In core, he's got 2 units of, well, he's got 4 units of 12 clan marksmen. The first 2 units have shields and guild-crafted handguns. Then the second 2 units have shields and crossbows. Finally, he's got a unit of 10 greybeards with absolutely nothing on them, which I asked him about, and essentially he got to the deadline day and just submitted a list without thoroughly checking it, so hadn't realised that he had a unit of 10 guys without shields or anything. But I mean, you know, still very cheap, very scoring. He hasn't got a BSB, so it's still giving a bubble of reroll panic, which is nice. So still worth their points probably. Next up is the really scary part of the list. It's 3 units of 25 Seekers, all with champions. The first 2 have Vanguard, and the final one has a Musician. So big blocks of in-your-face, unbreakable, real tough dwarves, all with lots of attacks, potentially lots of AP. This is the part of the list that I'm really going to struggle with. Next up, a pair of Grudge Busters, 2 lots of 10 Miners, all with shields, 1 unit with pistols, 2 Steam Copters in separate units with shrapnel grenade, so the 1-use sweeping attack, and finally a Dwarf Cannon. So fairly MSU, besides the 3 big, aggressive, no-nonsense blocks of Seekers, which, you know, I could probably deal with if I'm charging multiple Lancers into them, and then, even then, you know, it would still take me a couple of turns, and that's, you know, stopping me from attacking anything else in his army, so difficult to deal with. If I can avoid them, or chaff them up, or outmaneuver them, we should have a pretty decent game. So let's see how I got on. So post Vanguard, I shuffle my yeomen around slightly. Well, for this game we were playing marching columns, and the secondary objective was Spoils of War. So the 3 purple stars in the centre are the objectives. I think they are 6 inches off of where they were supposed to be, but I don't think that makes any significant change. Oh wait, no, maybe they... Yeah, I think they are in slightly the wrong spot. They're supposed to be 24 inches away from one another, aren't they? But I don't think it had any significant impact on the game. For my deployment, I've got my Might Duke, my BSB, and my Questing Knights on the far left, then my Knights Aspirant, then my Grail Knights in the centre next to the impassable terrain, with my Damsel and Valour Duke General in there, my 2 units of Yeomen, and finally my 2 small units of scoring Knights of the Realm on the far flank. I chose the right-hand side to deploy from, so I put down my 2 units of Realm Knights first, and then went out from right to left, leaving my big combat buses till last. He chose to do exactly the same, so he was also deploying from right to left, which meant that he could put down all of his MSU shooting, and then the Seeker blocks on the far side, where I was going to have a difficult time of avoiding and getting around them. I'm certain I could have done deployment better this game, but I'm not sure how I would have done. Potentially, I mix and match between my chaff and my big combat blocks, but that just spreads out his Seekers, and I'm not sure that's any better for me, so yeah, we're stuck with this now. So on his side, he's got a unit of crossbows, then a unit of handguns, a steam copter behind that, a unit of naked greybeards in the forest. Behind that is the cannon. Then another unit of crossbows with his engineer general in, his final unit of handguns, one grudgebuster, the unit of not vanguarding Seekers with the steam copter behind them, two vanguarding units of Seekers moved up into the ruins already. I think that's where the Rune of Mining went, by the way. And finally, the grudgebuster out on the very, very far left. So the vanguards happened as you can see them. I tried to protect mine by moving them up behind terrain or behind some forest, and he just pushed up relatively aggressively. I think he could have moved up further, but I think he's within reason to be a little bit further away. He doesn't want to tempt too long charges into my guys. So, going through to Dwarves turn 1 then. So, he shuffles around his Seekers on the left. I think the vanguarded units don't move further up than they were. Again, I can probably take them and go through if I hit one of them with enough units. So, yeah, he's wanting to avoid that for now. The two grudgebusters move up to support them. The shooting on the other side, the handguns move around a little bit because they've got accurate, so they're hitting on 6s at long range if they move, which is, it's fine for handguns. They're accurate. So they move up to get a little bit of range on my guys. The crossbows sit still, and the copters move forward, ready to do some chaffing. In shooting, he manages to take off a Realm Knight on the unit on the right, or the leftmost Realm Knight unit on the right-hand flank, and he kills 3 Grail Knights as well. Then onto my turn 1. With my moves, I move up pretty aggressively with my units of Realm Knights on the right. I sit on top of the objective with one of them. I should have moved the champion onto the objective because he's going to be... If something goes terribly wrong and I have one guy left, I need to have the champion on there, so that because otherwise I'm going to remove the other models first and the champion's going to be sitting there. Which means I'd no longer be sitting on the objective ready to pick it up next turn, which is a pain, but live and learn. So I move up aggressively there. I move the yeoman back out of range of his shooting again, and I try and cover as many places as I can to get no safe spots for his copters to go into. My Grail Knights shuffle over into the forest, where they can get some long-range cover from his shooting, which is otherwise pretty brutal. And my questing knights and my aspirants on the other side are nervously looking at the Seeker Horde rushing towards them. There's not an awful lot more I can do about that for now. And it looks like the crown is his grudge, so that's the units that his army has hatred against. Post-magic, I don't manage to get Oaken thrown off. I can't remember whether he dispelled it or not, but I do cast Summer's Growth on the Grail Knights, so I grow back 2 of those guys, which is nice. Besides that, I don't manage to do anything with shooting. Nothing else happens in magic, so we go to Dwarves turn 2. So his miners don't arrive just yet, so thankfully no ambush to worry about for the moment. He doesn't declare any charges, but he has managed to find a secret spot with his copter, just between the arcs of those 2 units of yeomen, which is a pain. But I can deal with that. That's a mistake on my part, but it was a very small space, so it was very tight. After his shooting, he kills off another 2 of the Grail Knights despite my cover. He kills a single yeoman on the left, and just as I said, I needed to have the champion sitting on the objective if he's the last guy remaining, but I didn't, so I'm killed down to one guy left, and he's no longer on the objective, so... Whoops. So going through to Equitaine turn 2. I have to give up on picking up that objective with the Realm Knights, otherwise he's just going to get shot off next turn, and I won't have that objective. So he moves off behind the Impassable on the right. The remaining Realm Knights go into the crossbows and lose one guy on a stand and shoot into that unit. I'm going to be able to reform in such a way that nothing's going to be able to see me besides the cannon, which is nice. And the Grail Knights in the centre, I figure I'm going to need the objective. If I can get magic off on my guys, I can protect me enough that I can pick up the objective. If I get one Grail Knight left, at least I can start regrowing them, or I can get Stone Skin on and ignore his shooting. At the very least, I'm going to have my General left to charge through into his units, and I think with a 1-up rerollable save and a 5+ Aegis, and the ability to duel out his General, I should be able to pick up enough points to make that worth it. The Yeomen shuffle around to act as chaff later on, and the two combat buses on the left shuffle forward a little bit towards his Seekers, just to, I think, to give them double 6s. So post-combat and magic, I do manage to grow back a couple of Grail Knights in the central unit. So I don't manage to get either Healing Waters or Stone Skin off on the Grail Knights, so they're now at the mercy of the Dwarf shooting, which might be brutal. But with Resilience 4, I should do well enough. You'll notice that the Dwarven crossbows have not broken, unfortunately. I did kill a couple of them, but they've... so they aren't steadfast, but they hold on a discipline of 4. Which was a shame, but that means I should be able to deal with them next turn, and then on his turn, and then that means I can reform on his turn and then charge, which would be nice. Or post-combat pivot and then charge. Going to Dwarves turn 3. So he finally brings on... the miners finally arrive. They clog up my Knights of the Quest, and with one of the 2 combat blocks over there, the rest of the Seekers suddenly get very brave, move up a lot further through the ruins. One of the Copters blocks my Grail Knight unit from charging into anything ready for next turn, and otherwise he shuffles around. So the Grudgebuster is also moved into a point where it can cover the flank of the Grail Knights if it gets an opportunity to charge me there. And the miners with the pistols have moved up into the flank of my Questing Knights to shoot them. So, post-shooting, he only manages to kill a couple of Grail Knights off the centre of the units, which is nice. I think those 2 Grail Knights, that's the 3rd time they've died this game. I love Druidism. The pistols in the top left kill 4 Questing Knights, but I pass my panic with my BSB there. Post-combat, I do manage to break the crossbows, which panics the handguns. They flee through the Greybeards, who do pass their panic, but they're now sitting in such a way that they are chaffing up his units, which is nice. And we go to Equitaine turn 3. So I take the charge into his Steam Copter. You might notice that I didn't charge into any of his units with my Realm Knights, and that's because I made a big boo-boo. I should have charged the remaining Realm Champion into those fleeing crossbows to push them off the board, and then just dealt with the fact that he was going to die. So instead, I figured I want to keep that Realm Knight alive, just for his points, maybe for scoring, maybe for other charges. So I'll charge the fleeing crossbows off with my 4 Realm Knights. I'll pass my redirect, and then I'll charge into the cannon, or the General's unit, or something else. But I have to pass a Discipline 8 check to do that, which I fail. So I charge off the crossbows, and then I'm pointing in the wrong direction. I don't get to charge anything. I'm now within grape shot range of the cannon. All terrible, and all because I made a dumb mistake. So that was silly of me. And then the aspirants on the left-hand flank there have just about the line of sight to the rear end of the Grudgebuster, and if I can hit that and then go off the table, then I essentially protect those points, or at least tie up a unit of Seekers having to point at me for when I do come back on the table. So he chooses to flee that unit, which gives me the Grudgebuster for free, and now as I'm charging anyway, I go for a redirect and I go into the front of the central Seeker unit. The questing knights don't want any part of going through miners onto Seekers, so they sit where they are, and in my moves I bomb the characters out. So I pass the march check, the BSB moves off as far as he can, away from everything. The Might Duke moves in such a way that he's now flanking those pistol miners, and the questing knights turn around to block up the miners from getting anywhere interesting. In moves, I move the yeomen above the forest into the forest to cover them from shooting, ready for chaffing later on in the game. The full unit of 5 moves in to stop, as best I can, the Grudgebuster from getting into the flank of my Grail Knights, despite them charging. I should go through, but just in case, should make it a little bit more awkward for it to get into contact with me. Nothing of note happens in Magic. Post-combat, I've also picked up the central Spoils of War token. Obviously, that's on the Grail Knights now. So I kill the Steamcopter, and then I think I need a 9 or a 10 to make it into those handguns or crossbows. And I do manage it, so I get all the way through, which puts me out of arc of the Grudgebuster, which is nice, and the rest of the units can't charge me because of that fleeing unit of handguns, which is nice. In combat with the aspirants, I only lose 4 guys, and I manage to kill about half the unit, but of course they're unbreakable, so they don't care, so they'll sit there and we'll fight again next turn. Dwarves turn 4. He charges his Grudgebuster into my chaff. He declines to charge my questing knights and decides to shoot them instead. The Seekers on the left there charge into the flank of my Knights Aspirant. That's the end of that unit now, but that's perfectly fine. They've served their purpose and distracted that unit of Seekers. The Seekers with the Musician turn around to where my Grail Knights have gone through his lines with their Musician. They do a swift reform and turn around for that. And his Copter on the right-hand side flies down to try and take shots at my remaining Realm Knight champion. Post-combat, of course, he wipes out the aspirants on the left. I think he wiped them out to a man. I don't think he needed to chase me or anything. Just with the high number of strength 5 AP2 attacks with paired weapons, he squished me. Poor aspirants. The Grudgebuster, of course, also makes very short work of the yeoman in the centre. And with the crossbows, with the handguns rather, of course, this is his turn, so my Grail Knights go in on an overrun, I kill them on his turn, and then I can reform and then charge on my turn again, assuming I pass a Discipline 9 restrain check, which I do not. So I fail that. The handguns flee through the house, I pursue after them, bounce off the house. Oh dear. I otherwise had the game pretty much in my hands here. I could have turned around and started dealing with Ian's shooting unit, still dealing with his champion. With his general even, but dice said no, unfortunately. So, Equitaine turn 4, post charges and moves. Up in the top left, my quests charge the pistol miners. I'm too close for them to stand and shoot. He decides to flee rather than give me the reform after I hit him. They flee off the table, and unfortunately that panics the other unit who fail their discipline and also flee off the table, so really brutal. My Grail Knights turn around to face the rest of his units, make sure that I've got the Grudgebuster in my front. I pop out the Green Knight and redirect the Seekers there. I don't want them charging into the flank, they'll just ruin that unit. last turn, by the looks of things, he did manage to finish off my Realm Knight in the bottom corner. So it's just that unit on the left now. So I've reformed to face towards the cannon and his Greybeards. Hopefully get a charge on my turn 5. The yeomen in the forest come out of the woods, ready for chaff that I might need to protect my Grails and the objective next turn. And my BSB marches up out of line of sight of those Seekers, just to get my breath weapon out on them, try and get them down to half points. And my Might Duke is very happy to just run away at this point and conserve his points away from the Seekers. So post my shooting, I do manage to kill them down to 6 guys, which I think is just enough to get half points on a unit, which is nice. The Seekers in the centre with my breath weapon, and we go to Dwarves turn 5. So this is post-combat. The Seekers in the left have charged my quests. I stood, he got into me, he had hatred, he was in my flank, he wiped them out. But that is that unit just taken out of the game now. It's not been able to do anything else other than take off the quests in the top left. The 6 Seekers continue marching up towards the left. They just need to do nothing but conserve their points now, and they're out of line of sight when they do that. The Seekers moored towards the centre, charge into the Green Knight and do unfortunately kill him in one go. And they reformed back towards my Grails. He chaffs me up with a unit of crossbows and rallies the fleeing handguns at the bottom, and turns the Greybeards back towards my Realm Knights on the right. His general has also bailed out of one of his units and is now hiding out of arc sight of all my guys. And we go to Equitaine turn 5. So I had just enough movement here with the Grails to do a swift reform and then move 8 inches out of line of sight of all the Seekers and everything. My BSB and Might Duke have moved into the forest to protect themselves from any shooting and potential charges. And my Yeomen have moved up in such a way to chaff his handguns from charging into my guys. I think they did have enough space to wheel into my rear, and of course I can't flee. He'd be breaking my steadfast. He potentially has enough. You know, that's what the chaff's for. They're just protecting that unit. My Realm Knights on the right charge into the cannon, hoping to kill that in a single turn. I managed to do 4 wounds to it. I also get healing waters off on my Grails in case he does a whole load of shooting on them. In combat, I do 4 wounds to the cannon, and unfortunately that means I'm open to a rear charge from his Greybeards. Turn 6, the Seekers turn around to face any rear charges from any of my guys. The Grudgebuster does the same. The handguns and Greybeards charge into my Realm Knights. I do manage to kill the cannon, but he also kills me. Nothing else happens though. I managed to hold on to the objective. I think I regrow a Grail Knight by the looks of things. And we go to my final turn. I pop the Damsel out of that unit to try and Master of Earth off his General's unit. If I can do enough to cause a panic, then he's going to flee off the table and I'll get the General for that, which would be nice. I charged the Might Duke into the Grudgebuster. I took a wound coming out of the forest, but he does flee away from me, so I get half points for that. And I charge my BSB into the flank of his crossbows. Again, if I can break him, then I get points for him. So I tried it. I don't think I managed it. I killed 2 guys, so yeah, and I don't manage it with the magic either. So that leaves it at the final score. So I have managed to hold on to the objective, which is nice, and that brings it around to an 11-9. So I killed far less. You know, it's a difficult list to get any points out of. I can't grind down the Seekers enough to get points out of those. And I didn't manage to catch enough of his MSU with my combat stuff. So he killed more of me, but I did manage to grab the objective with my cavalry. You know, fast-moving scoring is definitely going to have the upper hand here on Spoils of War. So I think I did well to manage that. It was not an easy game for me, especially with marching columns, making it difficult to avoid his big blocks of Seekers. I think probably any other deployment would have been difficult as well, because he's got more drops than I do, but yeah. Very pleased to come out with that on top. So, going into round 4, I'll be on 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss, which is pretty good. So, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.